Let's start the video off today with a confession. Confession is good for the soul, isn't it? Well, many years ago when I attended elementary school, I was a bit of a mischievous student. And me and a couple other friends made a lot of trouble with the school and on one particular teacher that we didn't like. We would do pranks like we would take the covers off light switches, we would fire off firecrackers in the school ground. One time we actually let off a smoke bomb. There was way more smoke than I would have imagined. It was kind of cool, actually. And my one teacher loved his fountain pen, and we took his pen and we hit it, and he got so mad that he blamed my sister's class for it. And then all of a sudden we resurrected the fountain pen, and voila, there it is. We would also hide his raisin bran muffins. He ate copious amounts of these muffins. He just loved them. And actually, funny thing is, I like them too, so I don't blame him. Anyhow, that's the type of pranks that we would get into and the kind of trouble I would get into. Well, the other day I came across some information about Anthony Scarpati, who was in the Colombo crime family in the 1970s and the 1980s. And there's not a lot of information about him on the internet or in book form. And I found this information in the course of researching for New York City youth gangs. And I found information about his school years. And as far as I know, there's nothing out there about his school years. And I thought it might be interesting to share that in this video. And when you watch this video, I want you to compare how you were in school, or maybe how I was when I confessed a moment ago, and compare it to what Anthony was like when he was in elementary school and high school. Scappy was born in 1933, and he lived in South Brooklyn at 345 3rd Street. He started attending school at the age of 6, which is when most kids start school, and he attended at Our Lady of Peace Parochial School. Everything was going great at first, but then out of the blue, for some reason, in grade 4, Anthony started skipping school when he skipped 30 days. Now, the reason he gave was that he was tired and he would fall asleep. But the school was having nothing of his excuse, so they kicked him out. So he enrolled at PS 77, and there was much of the same, a lot of skipping. So they kicked him out of that school as well. You see, what was going on was Anthony was sleeping in late, he was having breakfast late, he was running errands for his mother, and I'm not really sure why that was the case when he should be in school, but he was doing that. And there was a park across the street from his home, and he would play there. And this is what his elementary school years consisted of. He bounced around from school to school, skipping all the time, and getting absolutely no work done. As he was getting older, he got very close to attending high school. So in September 1947, he did just that, and he enrolled at Manual Training High School. Now, there's something you need to know about this school. In the 1940s and in the 1950s, this was a very rough, tough school. And it was a melting pot for a lot of white gangs. And I'm going to try to get the gang names down for you straight. There was the Jokers. There was the South Brooklyn Boys. There was the Red Hook Boys. There was the Sand Street Boys. There was the Washington Ave Boys. There was the Gowanus Dukes. There was the Kane Street Midgets. That's 7 that I count. And there's probably more that I'm not even aware of. Anyhow, the school noted that Anthony was a member of a gang. And I found out that the gang name was the Garfield Boys. Now, some of you might notice that in articles online, it says that Anthony was actually a member of the South Brooklyn Boys. This is actually correct. You see, the South Brooklyn Boys were a very large Italian gang, and they had many factions underneath them. And one of those factions was the Garfield Boys, which is what Anthony was. Now, there was another member of the Garfield Boys that was going to get a lot of notoriety in his adult years, and that was Carmine Persico, who became the boss of the Colombo crime family. Now, Scappy, he didn't do very good at Manual Training High. He lasted barely 3 months, and it was much of the same as in elementary school. He cut class constantly, and there was this little restaurant called Quality Restaurant. It was right across the street from the school. I think it was on 7th Avenue and 3rd Street. Anyhow, he would park himself here, skipping school, just whiling his time away. And for the times that he was in school, he was a tremendous nuisance. And thanks to his science teacher, whose name was Mr. Dorf, we know how much of a nuisance he was. You see, Mr. Dorf compiled a list of all the problems that he had with Anthony in his science class. And he actually used this list to testify against Anthony in children's court. And the judge agreed with his testifying, and he kicked Anthony out of Manual Training High and made him go to a reformatory school. Now, I actually have the list that Mr. Dorf wrote, and I want to read this list to you. It's quite long, but it really gives an idea of how much trouble Anthony was at school. 1. Anthony's attendance in class was very irregular and his cutting very frequent. 2. He defiantly refused to do any work while in class and never came prepared with notebook or writing implements. 3. There were 4 girls assigned to this class, and his attentions to them in class and in the hall after class were so vulgar and annoying that I had to request that the girls be removed from the class. 4. Scarpati was considered a hero by his fellow pupils, who informed me on the first day of school that Scappy was on probation and graduated from elementary school without having done any work. Teacher's nightmare, right? Continuing on with Mr. Dorf's list. 5. When present in class, he constantly interrupted. He was loud, vulgar, and defiant, and refused to cooperate. 6. On one occasion, during a fire drill, he turned on the gas jets in the science room as the class was leaving and turned them off again when the teacher reprimanded him. During the same fire drill, he forced his way to the front of the class and created a disturbance on the stairway. I was forced to literally drag him to the dean's office for discipline. 7. His friends in class told me that he should be aware of reprisals, but I passed this off as youthful exaggeration, and in fact, no reprisals of any sort were attempted. 8. Several weeks after he was kicked out of school, I met the boy in a coffee shop across the street from the school. It's probably the Quality restaurant that I mentioned earlier. And he told me that he was studying auto mechanics and enjoying it. His manner wasn't defiant or threatening. So thanks to Mr. Dorf for this list, because now we have some insight as to what Anthony was like in high school. Needless to say, Scappy didn't graduate high school, and he definitely didn't go to college, nor did he become that auto mechanic that he was thinking he might be. In May 1950, Scappy was involved in a gang rumble in Prospect Park between the Garfield Boys and the Tigers, and in this gang fight, he shot and he killed a member of the Tigers. He was arrested for this, and he was found guilty and sent away for 15 to 30 years. After he served his time, his old pal Carmine from the Garfield Boys was now the boss of the Colombos, and he had a spot for Anthony. So Anthony started off as a soldier, then he rose to a capo, and then from 1985 to 1987, he was the acting boss of the Colombos because Carmine himself was in prison. However, in November 1986, Scappy was sentenced to 35 years in prison for racketeering. And it was actually in prison that he died at the age of 68 in 2002. And so there you have it. I didn't go into a lot of details about his time in the Colombos because that's common knowledge, but the information that was new was his school years. I hope you found it as useful and interesting as I did. Thank you very much for following along and watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.